You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 111, Roger Glover, Marlon, and Natural Magic. And coming to you from the steamy suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Chicken and Waffles Matola.
It's just always a food every week now. Did you have it recently?
I'm into food. Yeah, I had some right before the show. That was dinner.
Chicken and waffles? What are you in? Are you coming to us from Providence this week or the South? It's like more of a Southern thing.
I have a friend that likes to go. I don't know why he likes to go to Chili's. I never go to chain restaurants anymore, but there's one like near my house, and so he's like, let's meet there for a drink. And
wait, are you about to tell me you had chicken and waffles at Chili's?
Yeah. Well, way to spoil the story, Nate.
Well, but, I mean, it seemed like that's where it was going.
Well, there's no buildup anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like having like the quesadillas or like, I didn't feel like having the Tex-Mex thing. So it was like, I don't know, it was like 9-10 o'clock at night or whatever. Like, we hadn't eaten. So I'm flipping through the menu and I said, oh, this looks good. And it was actually really good.
Really?
Yeah. And there were like four, like, single size, like little, they're like those thick waffles with the caramelized sugar on them and stuff. And then just like, one like kind of like chicken tender type thing on them, but there were four of them on the plate. So, we had been having like the chips and salsa and everything. So I ate two and I packed up the other two and took them home and I reheated them and they were goddamn delicious.
Well, that's good. I mean, I to all of our, if we have any listeners in the southern United States right now, I apologize. I'm sure this is like sacrilege for you to be living listening to this.
But yeah, that's typically I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't.
Like my last night out with the guys before COVID, we went to this place a couple towns over. They have a nice little downtown area, and then we had a dinner at a place, and I actually had chicken and waffles. It was really good. Mm-hmm. And then we walked over to this place that was like you give them a whatever, you buy a card and it's just an arcade and it has all old school arcade games, so like
nice
games from when we were kids. Yeah, that was a really good night. It was like right around Christmas, like right before Christmas or right before New Year or something like that. And then and then that was the last thing that I think I've done with any friends, like outside of anything, outside of the show or whatever. So
well, I'm fully aware that this was not an authentic experience. I mean, they also have like the cookie skillet dessert. So I mean, this is the same place. So well, I know,
sometimes that stuff works, and that's fine. One time when my wife and I had just met, we went to what was the name of that? The Rentham Outlets.
Yeah.
So this is probably 2002, maybe 2003. And we went to, is there like a TGI Fridays there or Ruby's Tuesdays? I always get the two confused.
Yeah, it was one of them that's got crazy crap on the walls.
And one of them that's named after a day of the week. So my wife ordered the French onion soup. And it came in a soup plate, like the long, like the big, long, like, which right away was kind of like weird. And then put it down, and it was basically the onion soup with like, they had floated some croutons on it, and then took like a Kraft single and kind of put it on the top.
Oh, no.
And I can't tell if they had microwaved it or just let it melt by the natural heat of the soup. And it was just like, I wasn't expecting haute cuisine at one of those places, but it was just, it was the audacity of calling that French onion soup, like where I used to work when we were in high school, Christopher's, Nice family little restaurant. We made the French onion soup. We made the soup. We made the little toast things on it. We put the shredded cheese on top. We baked it in the oven and got it nice all brown and bubbly. And that was not a fancy restaurant by any means. It was like the place where the blue hairs would come and get their family style chicken for $5.99 all you can eat, and then we increased the price to like $6.29, and people lost their minds. So this is not like a fancy place, but I was just kind of shocked by the audacity of this place to call that French onion soup. I wouldn't even call that any kind of soup. Just a big square of cheese on top, not brown. They didn't even bother to brown up the single slice of cheese. It was just
Wow.
melted on top.
I mean, you got to like temper your expectations with these places, right? I mean,
Of
I'm
course, yeah.
pretty sure that I told the story on here before when I went to Manchester to see Kiss last February, and the same friend that I was with, and we had stopped into I think it was an Applebee's because we wanted to go somewhere for like a drink and like some appetizers or whatever that was familiar,
Yeah.
and I would have preferred to go somewhere local to the town.
Somewhere unfamiliar.
Exactly, because let me tell you, the appetizer sampler was very underwhelming. It's just like it had like the chips, mozzarella sticks, all that kind of stuff, but it was like it was not good. And I'm like, this is why I don't eat in these restaurants. But the other night, the chicken and waffles thing did not disappoint, and I realize it's the McDonald's of chicken and waffles, so to speak. But
Hey,
hey,
sometimes that's
what's
what you
good is
want.
good. Yeah, it's good. I'm sure that if I was down south, it would, blow away anything that I had up here, but it's what I had for dinner, so it's all good.
Hey, well, that's okay. I don't think we have too many Southern listeners. They're too busy listening to Skinner Reconsidered. But hey, we're not here to talk about chicken and waffles. We're here to talk about Deep Purple, or at least tangentially talk about Deep Purple. But before we get to that, I want to talk about ways that you can support the show. If this show brings value to your day, to your night, to your morning, whatever, however you listen to this on your commute while you're doing the dishes, whatever. If you're sitting by the fire listening and while sipping whiskey, however you listen to the show, if this brings you value, give us a little value back. Throw us as little as $1 on Patreon, PayPal, whatever your choice. The link is on our page, deeppurplepodcast.com. You can go there and sign up to become a patron. You can also buy merch at our Etsy store. We have some mugs and t-shirts still available. And then you can also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And speaking of 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, we have one that came in just the other day.
Oh, a new one.
And we're a new one, and we're back to the U.S. This was a domestic review. Came in May 10th. The review is from our good friends Deep Blackmore. 5 stars. Subject line: great podcast. Loved your podcast. Loved your podcast, Burn Isolated Tracks. Always loved this album and have heard it thousands of times, but I heard parts of the song I never heard before. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Deep Blackmore. We appreciate that. Much appreciated. And you know who else we appreciate? Well, if you guessed our executive level patrons, you guessed correctly. Coming in at the $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier, we have Ryan M. The $15 Highball Shooter tier, Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg. At the Turn It Up to $11 tier, Frank Teelgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. And at the $10 Someone Came tier, Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorld'sAStage.net, Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, Victor Campos, and Richard Fusey. Thank you to all of you for your support. And I do have to give one extra special thanks to Jeff Bryce, who this week moved heaven and earth to supply me with info for this show and materials, as I had ordered the single, one of the singles that we're going to discuss here today, and it was coming from France and it didn't arrive in time. So I reached out to Jeff. I'm like, Jeff, do you have this? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he sent it over to me. So I've got the single, and this is what you're going to hear now is a vinyl rip of the single when we get into it. But before we get into it, got to give a little bit of background. And there's basically almost nothing out there about what we're going to talk about today, which is 2 singles and A sides and B sides that Roger Glover worked on co-wrote, co-produced, and played on. And the first one is called Marlon, which, if you've been following along, you remember is Ray Fenwick's alter ego, which he used on Fancy, when he was in Fancy. And if you remember, I did reach out to him and asked what was up with being called Marlon all of a sudden. For this very brief span of time, he referred to himself as Marlon, and he said, I don't have the email in front of me, but you know what? Let me look it up, because it was just too great to I don't want to butcher it. So I asked him the questions. I asked him what was up with the alias Marlon, and he said, and I quote, good to hear from you. Answer to your question. Marlon came from a leather jacket I had made. It had a white leather logo script on the back reading Marlon. Homage to Brando? Why? Who knows? Love that. So I guess he liked Brando, and he's just like, I don't know. He just had a leather jacket that's Marlon on the back, so he decided to be called Marlon for a brief period.
And I enjoyed holding him to that for the entire Fancy episode. I would not call him Ray Fenwick. I'd call him Marlon the whole time,
he was
which
Marlon.
Which you found very amusing.
It was good, and I think we're gonna have to do the same today. So, probably have a shorter episode in store for you this week, but some interesting stuff. And like I said, I scoured the internet for information about the projects that we're about to listen to, and there's really not much out there. Neil Pretty, in his book Purple Records 1971 to 1978, says of this first project, and that's a great book. We've referenced it before, especially when we were going into the early Deep Purple stuff. It's a great reference book that kind of goes album by album of all the Purple Records releases, and then it goes into the singles too. And he's got a little information about all of them, but there's not much on this. But Neil Pretty writes, and I quote, Roger Glover collaborated with guitarist Ray Fenwick for an attempt on the charts with a disco track. Needless to say, it didn't achieve its objective.
I'm excited now. Disco.
So we're going to be listening to, first off, a Roger Glover and Ray Fenwick disco track called Let's Go to the Disco.
That's really on the nose, isn't it?
That's when you're writing it's like when you're writing a funk track and you have to have the word funk in it so people know. Same thing with disco. This is a disco track, so put the word disco in it, just so people know. We're not confident enough in our disco skills to make it apparent that this is disco. We need to tell you it's disco.
Right. I mean, unless it's on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, you're not going to know.
Exactly. That for sure. You're good. But on the cover of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, you would, of course, have John Travolta doing his little pointy sort of thing. On the cover of the single for this, we are reminded of a previous singles we've covered, as the cover simply says Marlon in, I don't know, pinkish, purplish letters on a blue background. Let's Go to the Disco in a very ornate font. And then two boobs. I feel like whenever we cover these singles, we always kind of boobs somehow come into play. And this is an interesting one because it's just two naked boobs, but a few things about them. One is it's the same picture of one boob repeated. So it's not like, you know what I mean? It's not two boobs on one body. It's a picture of one boob and then cut and pasted, bang, right to the side of it. So they're two like left boobs of the exact same picture. Why this would be I mean, you can understand. We've seen other, particularly German releases, seem to always have, they had that alternate, what was it, cover of that Trapeze album where it was like the naked woman kind of, and it was called Running, and she was like running, and it was actually a pretty cool cover. She was naked, so you could see something like that, like, okay, we're gonna sell records because there's a naked woman on the cover. This is just like it's black and white, almost kind of pixelated, just the same boob. So,
well, maybe there was only money in the budget for one boob. And they were like, hey, let's do this.
I can picture they go into this like smoke-filled room. The accountant's got that little visor on. He's smoking a cigar. He's like, I'm trying to make these numbers work. I don't think we can get two boobs, guys. What do you mean?
Sorry, just one. We can only do one.
night. I can't make this work, guys.
We can only do lefty.
And only a left boob. I don't even have enough money for the same right boob. It has to be a left boob.
Oh.
So yeah, that's the
Well, that's
that's
bizarre,
that's
nonetheless.
that's the German cover. And then this and you see the little and this is like official. There's the little purple record. We've talked about those booby bootlegs before, where they just shoved some boobs on a single and released it. This is got the purple records emblem on the bottom. This is officially
Right.
approved. In the, I believe this was a UK release, which also has the purple logo on the bottom right this time. And it just says Marlon, let's go to the disco, very boring font, and then it has some records flying around. So I think for what the German cover is, it's probably going to attract more attention, not even just the fact because there's boobs on it, but from the fact that it's definitely more interesting. This is a very generic looking
Yeah.
sleeve here.
I mean, even the boob cover is kind of not exciting. It's just like,
No, they manage. It's like the most boring boobs possible.
I mean, it's kind of like it's not enough to it's not enough to put them on there. You got to do something interesting with them. Instead, they're just like here.
It's for utility. Yeah, it's like just
Ta-da!
like there.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
there's some boob. They said they wanted something provocative on here. They mentioned boobs. We put boobs. We did the bare minimum. They said boobs. That's plural. There's two here that cover. We're covered. We got all our bases covered. Boobs. Yeah,
Print it.
very
Cut.
unusual when you think of what they could have done. And presumably that comes from a picture of someone that had two boobs. They could have used that whole picture. So I don't know. Who knows? We could probably do a whole episode on just why this cover is the way it is. Again, the UK version's way more boring than that. And then you've got the label itself. The A side is called Let's Go to the Disco. This is the standard Purple Records label there. Produced by Roger Glover and Ray Fenwick. Written by Glover and Fenwick as well. And then the B side is a track called Broken Man, by also written and produced by Glover and Fenwick. And the reason that I kind of wanted to get into this week was because Ray Fenwick just released his 3 CD anthology, Playing Through the Changes, covering 60 years in music, which is awesome. And he did actually put a nice remastered version of Broken Man on there. And I remember when I spoke to him, I don't know, a few months back and was asking him about this project, he said, oh, one of the tracks is going to be on this upcoming thing. So I was really excited about it. For some reason, I thought both tracks were going to be on it. So I got the actual record copy. So you'll hear the productions or the quality is not 100%, just some record scratches, but it's a very authentic experience. And then the back sleeve, written in German, it's got a few other things. It's promoting, including Queen 2. And then it just says, it's got the information that we talked about. And it does say the cover photo of, I guess it must be the boobs, is by Atelier. I didn't actually look this up. Atelier Kochlowski. I think we should probably look this guy up. And he's on Discogs. He's not even credited for this on Discogs. That's terrible. So anyway, so probably just a guy that was doing some record shoots for the label or whatever. But that is the art behind Let's Go to the Disco.
Kind of feel like the B side is kind of a letdown. You're like, let's go to the disco, and then Broken Man. It's like, what is that, like the night of, and then like the night after, or the morning after?
At the disco.
It's like Broken Man, like after the disco. I got shot down by every broad in there.
So
Vinny.
he just goes home and he looks at his one picture of a single boob to console himself. It's like that picture of Wolverine. Single boob, you're my only friend. All right. So with that, are you ready to listen to a Roger Glover and Marlon disco track?
So we know that they wrote it. Like, are they both playing on it?
From what I understand, they're both playing on it. There's really like I said, if anyone's got listening and has any information on this, please let us know. But
Oh,
I
so we don't
searched.
even know who the musicians are?
No idea.
Wow.
Maybe I could ask Ray and see if he remembers any of it. But
Oh, okay.
nothing really about the musicians or what was going on. But you'll see this is 1974. And the same thing with the Natural Magic, I think, is also 1974. And what you'll hear is this is the same exact time they would have been working on Butterfly Ball. So Ray Fenwick,
Hmm.
Roger Glover, Eddie Hardin are all together. There's this one project he did with Ray Fenwick and another one he did with Eddie Hardin. And you'll hear definitely some things that are reminiscent of the style they were using there.
So this is early disco. This is 74, not like later 70s disco. So this
Yeah,
should be interesting.
yeah, wow, very, very early disco. This is
Yeah.
coming out the same time as Burn, so
Wow.
that's funny. It's funny to think that disco was even a thing, like a term at that early, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm ready
but
for these tracks.
all right, you ready to go to the disco?
I'm ready. I'm putting on my polyester leisure suit.
Right. Let's do it. Let's go to the disco. Almost has like a Bay City Rollers kind of feel to it.
Yep.
I can't tell if that's Ray Fenwick.
I was gonna say I think it might be because I thought it was him.
That yeah, that's got to be those. It's got to be like Helen Chappelle and Barry St. John and Liza Strike. They were doing everything at that time.
You know, now that you said that it was around the same time as the Butterfly Ball, I can kind of hear some Butterfly Ball elements.
Yeah, totally.
And this is not what I was expecting, to be honest. I was expecting something a lot more smooth and like late 70s until you told me the year. So this is kind of like pop rocky.
Yeah.
I mean, I could buy this as a Butterfly Ball outtake.
Oh, totally. Like at the discotheque, we're gonna get wrecked. I mean, for that reason, the things that are reminding me of the Butterfly Ball, I have a fondness for this era and their songwriting style, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong with a sax solo like that.
No, it was good. Almost has that kind of 50s doo-wop kind of thing to it.
Yeah, it almost sounds more like doo-wop. I don't know if disco was as well defined in the early 70s.
Probably not. Because I mean, I know that it's a rip from a vinyl, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it does kind of have that, kind of not a really slick type of production to it, or it sounds like I feel like even if it was cleaned up, it wouldn't.
Right. It's a little muddier sounding.
Right. Like I was like when you said like a disco song I was expecting the whole boo boo boo, I was expecting like something from Play Me Out, like
Yeah.
Something more like that. So that was kind of a surprise.
Well, Roger Glover has a pretty good track record with uh writing songs in like a style, like being able to, be could do almost, I don't want to say parody because it's not really um the right frame, but or the right uh
No, I know what you mean.
way to frame it, but he can mimic a style if he has to, and he does a lot of that in the Butterfly Ball. You've got songs like Arenea's, like that reggae kind of song, and then you've got like kind of like heavier song. So he kind of bounces along in a few different, emulates a few different genres on that, and this is seems almost like the same. Like my trying, he even did that. What the heck is the name of that song he did with Episode 6? It's like the it's like a Beach Boy. It's like the Little Morris 10, or what the heck is the name of it?
Oh man, I don't know.
Um, he has that song, Mighty Morris 10. I'm sorry. Where he does
But
like a Beach Boys style song, and it's all
right.
about his car. In some ways, it's kind of like a precursor to Highway Star, but it's done in this Beach Boys style, where he's just talking about a car over and over. And this kind of reminds me of the same thing, of just kind of mimicking a style. But you pointed out like the doo-wop thing really comes through strong.
It kind of makes me think of No Solution from the Butterfly Ball. Da da
Yeah.
da da
Yep.
da 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 da. Kind
Yeah,
of.
and it's got the same kind of horns.
Yeah, and this one is kind of like bum bum ba ba da ba. It kind of has like the same kind of tempo to it, or
Yeah.
just very. And I mean, of course, it was like the same guys probably wrote and all, for all we
Yep.
know, played on it. They
Yeah, for all
probably,
we know, it's Les Binks and Mo Foster on this. I don't
yeah,
know, but
probably in the Butterfly Ball, the studio doing Butterfly Ball, and they're like, hey, let's cut this disco song.
yeah, it could have been. It could have been just like a one off there. They were, or it could have been something left over from that session. Who knows? But it
Yeah.
definitely, uh, yeah, it's a fun track. It's got a
Yeah,
cool style to it.
I thought
That
so. It wasn't I don't know, like that I would like listen back to it. But I mean, it was definitely cool to listen to. And I had no idea it existed. So
that one's hard to find. Like that one, I can't. It's that one. Yeah, that one I couldn't even find a crappy version on YouTube of it. It was just
wow.
Broken Man for some reason. But
Yeah, well, that was cool to kind of like hear, almost like consider it like a Butterfly Ball outtake.
yep.
It feels like.
Well, there's another Butterfly Ball outtake on this one anyway, and that is the B side to this, which is called Broken Man. And I'm not gonna play the cleaned up one. But if you like this, it's on Spotify, on Ray Fenwick's latest release, and you can get it on CD as well. But I'm gonna to keep everything consistent. I'm gonna use the vinyl rip of this song as well, so that they kind of sound the same. So this is Broken Man. And this sounds like Roger Glover and Ray Fenwick singing together.
Yep. Definitely sounds like they're going for a country thing here.
I'm a broken man. You led me up the river to Heartbreak Hotel. You turned me around, you brought me down like a 10-pin strike I fell. You tried to make me feel bad, and you can't. 'Cause I'm a broken man.
And they still managed to get a guitar solo in this song, even though it's only 2.5 minutes.
Sitting by the telephone, waiting for the bell to ring. It's a lonely game, waiting in vain for you to call my name.
real cool guitar solo, very reminiscent of the Butterfly Ball Fly Away guitar solo. That like slide, kind of sliding up and playing all those like kind of dyads or whatever.
It's hard to lose when a man can't choose how to run a losing race. Why I'm down, I'll never understand. I'm a broken man.
It's like
Now
not
that I
as,
wasn't expecting either. I wasn't expecting that either.
what were you expecting, John?
Well, when you listen to the two titles, then you just kind of, without knowing what's going to be on it, it's kind of interesting how one can draw like conclusions about it. Like, so I'm thinking like, Let's Go to the Disco is going to be this late 70s disco-y track, and then Broken Man is just kind of like, oh, that doesn't go. And then you think it's going to be this kind of like, just because of the titles, maybe like a brooding or maybe kind of a slower song or whatever. But these two songs couldn't have been any like different, I mean, which just goes to show you that, like, don't pay attention to the titles, because I would have never thought that this would have been kind of like a early 70s poppy and then kind of a like a country, early 70s country type songs. But, and then of course, knowing, Roger Glover and Ray Fenwick, like it pretty much sounded like what I would expect from them, because, hearing some of Roger's solo stuff, like just hearing Broken Man, it's like, yeah, it sounds like a Roger song.
Yep.
Which is also really kind of cool if you think about too, that because I was thinking during this, wow, he's got like so much like different work that he has a style that's all his own. Like when he's playing Roger Glover stuff, he sounds like Roger Glover, but he can also write Deep Purple, he can also write Rainbow, and like kind of keep that separate so it doesn't like noticeably creep in. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't hear this in like a Rainbow album later and be like, oh, that kind of sounds like that Roger Glover song. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he has he's almost kind of like a chameleon.
Right.
He can figure out, like for Butterfly Ball, he had a, he's commissioned to do that, and he had a goal in mind, and he set out and he did it. And for something like Mask or Elements, he got into that mindset and did that. And for Deep Purple, he writes those songs. So yeah, you wouldn't necessarily pick up, say, Highway Star and then Broken Man and then something random off of Butterfly Ball and then something from the Joe Lynn Turner era of Rainbow. If you played those for someone who doesn't know Roger Glover is, they would guess these are like 4 or 5 completely unrelated songs, because he's
Which
that good. And production wise,
exactly.
he's that good at making it sound like something else altogether. So
yeah, I mean, that just shows how talented he is, I think.
And I agree. But that would have been a cool single to pick up back in the day. And I don't I don't know what people would have thought of it, between, like you said, what the things are, if you know who the players are, if you're looking at this weird cover with the two duplicated boobs, like what are you thinking when you're putting all this together? I guess that's it didn't sell particularly well. It did not chart. I think it was, like you said, they were in the studio, they banged this out for whatever reason, thought, maybe, if it's a hit, it's a hit. We get a little bit of money. If it's not, whatever. And then I guess it was not. But everyone else is lost, because some great Roger Glover and Marlon stuff right there. But before we get on to the next project, we really do have to thank our core level patrons. Coming in at the episode $6.66 tier, nobody, still vacant. Kenny Wymore could not quite get there. He's at the $6.65 almost evil tier, not feeling quite evil enough. At the $5.99 nice price tier, we have Fielding Fowler and Dr. Jill Brees. At the $5 money lender tier, we have Greg Sealby, John Convery, Arthur Smith, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Alman, Alexi the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Kev Roberts, and Will Porter. And at the $3 Nobody's Perfect here, Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Andrew Meyer, Duncan Leask, and of course, Stuart Whiskey by the Fire McCord. Thank you for all of your support of the Deep Purple podcast. We really appreciate it. All right, so now we've got another project again that we don't really know anything about. We just know it's called, and it's a little confusing. If you hear stomping, that's probably my kids.
I
saw
thought
you-
that was, I didn't know if it was here or there.
I saw you looking upstairs. I could hear it and feel the walls vibrating, so I know it was from this end. Yeah, so this one's called Natural Magic, and what it is it's Roger Glover and Eddie Hardin. Another, the three of them, Ray Fenwick, Glover, and Hardin are pretty much the Roger Glover was obviously the main driving force behind Butterfly Ball, but Hardin and Fenwick both collaborated on some of the songs and got songwriting credits on some of them. So he did this project with them, Natural Magic. If you look it up on Discogs, it's weird because there's other bands called Natural Magic that aren't related, and there's also, they attribute in some of them, the Green Bullfrog is attributed to Natural Magic, which must just be an error. I'm not exactly sure why. And it's also that one that's got the cover of the frog and it says, featuring, or it's got the quote by Ritchie Blackmore that's wrong, where he says, "Oh yeah, Roger Glover was on this." It's on the front of the album. Roger Glover was not on that album. And maybe that's why I got attributed to Natural Magic. I don't know. But it's kind of funny because I saw just a bunch of random stuff coming up, but I couldn't find anything. Usually when I'm looking for some of these more obscure things, I'll stumble upon like a GeoCities site from, the mid 90s, and it'll have some little bit of information. I mean, I tried and I really couldn't find much other than that this is Eddie Hardin and Roger Glover. So the artwork for this is a little less developed or a little less interesting, but it's just basically, there's no sleeve that we can quite find. It's just got the first track here. It's on the Oyster label, and Strawberry Fields Forever, a Beatles song. So Roger Glover and Eddie Hardin did this. It says produced by Glover, Austin, and Hardin. I don't know who Austin is. It wasn't really listed on the Discogs site. It just says, like, if I look at it right here, it just says, published by Glove Music, published by Purple Music, published by Peter Maurice Music Limited, whatever that means. So I don't know who Austin is. If anyone's got any information on that, let us know. Probably should have reached out to Ray ahead of time, but didn't want to bother the man. So that's the A side, is the Strawberry Fields Forever. And maybe the thinking behind that was, throw out a cover of a Beatles song and you're guaranteed to get some, maybe you'll get some sales on it. This one is 1975. And then the flip side of it is a track called Isolated Lady. And this one is written by Roger Glover and Eddie Hardin. So we have Broken Man and Isolated Lady.
Yeah, I was going to say Broken Man and Isolated Lady. That sounds like a couple of really unhappy people.
I know, right? Kind of depressing. And the Oyster label was the one that kind of got spun off from Purple Records, wasn't it? Or it's the one that they released Rainbow on, because I think that's what it was. If memory serves, they released the Rainbow albums on Oyster because Ritchie Blackmore didn't want the word purple or anything on the record. So I think they used Oyster. So I'm not sure why this would be on Oyster, but it's kind of interesting though, because you see on the one side of the record, you have the one side of the oyster shell with the pearl in it. And then on the B side, it's like the back side of the oyster shell with no pearl. So kind of cool. All right. I know I hesitate to ask you this because I know you're never really, I don't know that Strawberry Fields Forever is your number one go-to track, but are you ready to listen to some Roger Glover and Eddie Hardin doing Strawberry Fields?
Should be interesting.
Here we go. Let me share the screen with you. Strawberry Fields Forever. using like some sort of organ or keyboard instead of the mellotron.
Let me take you down, yes, I'm going to Strawberry Field. Nothing is real,
Fairly
nothing to get hung
a little more synthy, but fairly faithful to the original, but a little more lush with the vocals.
Living is easy with eyes closed. Misunderstanding all you see. It's getting hard to be someone.
When I heard the drums come in, I thought it was my kids making noise.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Field.
I don't think that they nailed that. Like there is kind of like a weird slowdown in the Beatles one. I don't think they nailed it quite right.
Honestly, I don't know enough about the original one to know if you put this on, if I would know the difference.
There's Eddie Harden taking a solo there. The drums sound like they're in on some other planet. I think they might give the Seventh Star drums a run for their money as far as drum sounds go. I think if anything, this is even trippier than the original. You hear the synths and everything remind me of Butterfly Ball and Wizards Convention sounds put into a Beatles song.
Yeah.
Always know, sometimes think it's me, but you know I know and it's a dream.
It really sounds like the drums are coming from upstairs. I just keep thinking it's my kids.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Field. Nothing is real, nothing to get hung on. Strawberry Fields forever. Strawberry Fields forever. Strawberry Fields forever.
Sounds good. The original's got a really trippy kind of outro portion. They're definitely nailing the trippy vibe in the song, although it is in a different style.
Yeah, I always guess it's kind of weird when like a band is covering the Beatles and they try to out trippy the Beatles. Right?
Yeah, I mean, in some songs it's possible, but that's a very particularly trippy Beatles song, and it's odd because when they recorded the Beatles version, they slowed it down so John Lennon's voice, if you listen to that song, is very low, way lower than it normally is because they slowed the whole thing down, and it's got the mellotron, and I think it's one of the earliest uses of the mellotron. It's usually what people
Yeah.
think of when they think of that sound. It's using the flute's tape loop on the mellotron, so it's got that very distinctive style that they kind of emulated here with an organ or some various synths. But a lot of it's at one point very faithful to the original, but at the same time they did throw in a lot of extra stuff in there. So
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't have known except maybe if I had paid attention, and I'm like, because obviously, I mean, I don't live under a rock. I've heard this song before, but
Sure.
like I would probably like hear certain parts and be like, that sounds different. But like I said, I don't really notice the differences because I don't, as familiar with the Beatles.
Well, that
They're pretty cool.
song is one of the earliest songs I can ever remember hearing as a kid. It was on the, well, it was a single, but it was also on the Magical Mystery Tour album, and I've got, which is right over here to my side here, my dad's copy of it, and it was one of the ones at the end of the song. As it's fading out, you hear somebody say, "I buried Paul," and you see a part of that stupid Paul McCartney is dead thing. Although they claim they were just saying cranberry sauce, and who knows what they were actually doing. Whether they did it on, they did stuff on purpose to tease their fans or to drive people crazy because they knew this stupid conspiracy theory was out there. But then there were also additional things that people read into that weren't there. So I don't know which category that fell into, but I remember my dad telling me about it when I was very young. And the end of that song is really trippy because it's got all this banging, like bong 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 kind of sound. And as it's fading out, my dad cranks up the volume so I can hear the "I Buried Paul," and then I hear it, and then the volume's all the way up, and then it cranks into Penny Lane, and it just scared me to death. So like to this day, when I hear the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, it gives me like a little anxiety because I feel that fear of what's going to come next, but also just the it's kind of creepiness of it. It's got this backwards tape loop in the background. It's going, and it's just very creepy song that I think they did a pretty good job emulating. But interesting. So I know even amongst some pretty good Deep Purple fans, it's probably not well known that any of these projects were around. So it's kind of interesting to dig into them. But that leads us to the last track on the Natural Magic single, the B-side, which is the Wife of the Broken Man, and that's the Isolated Lady. And this to me sounds like it could be right off a Wizards convention. I love this groove. Must be Roger Glover playing the bass, I assume. Sounds like a really fuzzed out in the left speaker there, like a fuzzed out synth sort of sounding thing.
Yeah. Got some sort of like maybe a flange or a chorus on the piano.
mean, it doesn't sound like the mix of that was particularly great, or the Strawberry Fields one. The drums sounded like they were coming from a different planet, but it's also hard to tell because it's on a being played on a nearly 50-year-old record.
Right.
So cleaning it up or remixing it could definitely bring out some nuance that you can't really tell from that perspective.
Hmm.
What do you think of Isolated Lady?
It was okay. It had a good groove to it,
I mean,
in parts.
it had a lot of the elements like how I feel about Wizards Convention and just Eddie Harden in general. I'm just a huge fan and love that album so much. So when I hear those kind of like with the other songs, hearing those glimmers of, oh, this could be from the Butterfly Ball era. From this, I hear, oh, this could be from Wizards Convention, and I hear those trademarks. Like I said, he like puts like a flange or a chorus on an acoustic piano, and Hardin always seemed to blend like synths in with acoustic instruments and acoustic pianos in a way that I always found really, really interesting, and really love his voice and his songwriting style. It's really interesting. So, and I can't wait till we get to Wizards Convention one day. But it's to me, it's kind of reminding me of that. And there's one thing that doom 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 doom, and they had that kind of little ascending thing, and it's gonna drive me crazy. I'll probably think of it at 3 a.m. But it reminding me of a classic rock song that I know and I know.
Love
But
Hunter.
what?
Love Hunter.
Love Hunter? No, not Love
Dum,
Hunter.
bum, 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 ba-da-dum,
Oh yeah,
ba-da-dum,
yeah.
bum, bum,
I guess
bum.
so. Yeah. Now that you mention it, no, it's
Well,
not
when
what
you
I'm
did
thinking.
that, I was like, I'm a love hunter. Bum, 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 But
No, it's is it maybe that's what it is. Uh yeah, I gotta look it up to make sure I get the right song. Hold Your Head High, is that the song? Hold your head high. You know that one? No? Anybody?
anybody, just me.
You hold your head up. Oh, hold your head up. Oh, hold
Oh,
your
okay,
head
yeah.
high. Like when they get to that, I think that's what I was thinking of. It kind of reminded me
Okay.
of but a another interesting track. Uh I would love to hear cleaned up versions of all that because the cleaned up version of Broken Man on the Ray Fenwick anthology is really, really good. So it would be interesting to hear a cleaned
Hmm.
up version of all of these tracks, but let's be honest, it's never going to happen. If anyone
Yeah,
could
I
even
mean,
load, well, Ray Fenwick must have the tapes because he redid Broken Man, so he must have the tapes at least for Let's Go to the Disco. Um, so that would be possible. As far as the Natural Magic stuff, who knows?
yeah, these were pretty interesting tracks, in a historical context to listen to them and just hear kind of like you said, really obscure stuff that
Hmm.
these guys did.
Yeah, I would love to hear more because they must have even worked on other projects that weren't released, or who knows.
I'm
But I
sure.
know that there's a really cool video or a cool little documentary on the song Love Is All, and it's got interviews with Eddie Harden, I think Roger Glover, Ronnie James Dio, and it's on YouTube. I put it on YouTube. So that's why I know it's there. But uh Jorg had sent it to me, and I put it on YouTube because it wasn't on YouTube, and it's something that aired on Dutch TV in the 90s. So I put it on there
Mhm.
and figured, hey, they'll take it down if they don't want it up there, and it's been up ever since. But it's really cool, and they Eddie Harden talks about working with Roger Glover, and I know they worked together on stuff for a little while, so there's presumably other stuff out there, but it's pretty cool. I think the two of the greatest convergences of all these musicians for me are obviously Butterfly Ball and Wizards Convention. So
Right.
we've already extensively covered the Butterfly Ball, Wizards Convention up on deck eventually, and really again looking forward to that. I don't know if we're gonna link up the same way we did on Butterfly Ball on that one, but it's uh it's great stuff for me. But that's it. Two singles, four very rare tracks there. A big shout out to Jeff Bryce for getting those to me. Really, really appreciate that and all of his help. He's always got tons of great feedback about the show. He'll send me, if we do an episode on something, he'll send me pictures of his collection. He's got to have one of the best record and paraphernalia collections in North America, just all the stuff that he sends. Um, whether it's merchandise or posters or stickers, singles, albums, it just everything you can think of that's even remotely related to Deep Purple, he's got it. So he should turn his house into a museum. So, and he's only one state away. I'll have to go pop in and visit his museum one day, if he'll allow me in. But anyway, yeah, that's what we got this week. And if you want to know any more information about this stuff, again, I'll put the links to the very few of these items that are out there. I'll put them on deeppurplepodcast.com so you can look for yourself. And before we break it up this week, and like I said, it's a shorter episode, right? I always say it's going to be a shorter
I think it
episode,
is finally.
but this is actually like one of the shortest episodes we've done in a long time.
Yeah, I'm like, that's it. In and out, baby.
And we started early tonight, so it's like I feel like we can't possibly be ready to stop. And usually, if we got a shorter episode, I ask people for like a Q&A sort of thing, but I didn't even do that this week. So.
Well, what else can we talk about?
Last week, I thought it was going to be a shorter episode, and it ended up going over.
We'll split the difference.
Yeah, the audio cut out, and at the end of the episode, remember, I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, why don't I have your audio? It was because we had reached the file size limit. I just was for some reason thinking it was shorter than it was. We reached the file size limit. The audio cut off, so it wasn't recording anymore. So we kind of had that little glitch at the end of the show. Yeah, but this week, hey, maybe this will entice some people to look at their. We have had those people that have said, I look at my pod thing, I say, oh my God, 2 hours and 15 minutes is too long. So there'll be some people that'll be happy this week, some people that will be sad, because a lot of people also say they like that length. But before we break up, we've got to thank our foundation level patrons. Coming in at the $1 made up name tier: L's Murders, Spacey Noodles, The Unsecured Leaky Mausoleum, Michael Vader, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 fanatic, Raf Calf, Spike the Rock Cat, and JJ Stenard. Thank you so much to all of you for supporting the Deep Purple podcast, helping things going, putting in that money in the kitty towards the new computer fund, which one day will hopefully become a reality. At this point now, it's more so about the aggravation of having to build a computer and reinstall everything than about actually purchasing it. So that's going to stink. But I don't know. You got anything else for this week before we break up?
I got nothing.
You got nothing. Yep, neither do I.
No, you. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? That's a good thing.
Yeah, we're giving you guys a little bit of time back. And you know what? If you've got that time, why don't you check out the Deep Dive Podcast Network, one of our other fine shows. You know what? That's actually a really good idea. Is what we can do to bring it back, to use up this time. I'm going to recommend some other great podcasts I've listened to lately. So first of all, the Magicians Podcast, Uriah Heep, Scott Haskin, 4 episodes a week. This guy's doing insane. So he's into the John Lawton era now of Uriah Heep, and I'm loving it because I love John Lawton, and I think that's my era of Heep. I'm really digging what he's doing with that. Yeah, but he's nuts. 4 episodes a week.
Crazy.
North by South Pod, the monthly podcast coming to you from Rye at Skinner Reconsidered and the Simple Man at Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast and the Simple Man at Skinner Reconsidered. So Rye lives in Canada, in Ontario, and the Simple Man lives in Nashville. So every month they do this monthly podcast. They pick a subject. The most recent one was murder ballads, and Rye will pick one from a Canadian outfit. The Simple Man will pick one from an American group, and they'll pit them against each other, and the listeners, kind of interactive listeners, get to go and vote for which one they liked the most. So that's really cool. The most recent one, Murder Ballads, and it pits. What does it say? The two songs in here in the show notes. It doesn't. I think you have to wait to listen to the episode to find out. Sabbath Bloody Podcast did another Black Sabbath Sabbath seance, which is really, and that one came out just a couple days ago, I think. So that's a really cool one. Check that out. It's the rest of the conversation he had with the ladies from Black Sabbath last time they talked about California Jam, which was really cool. What are the other more recent ones? In the Lap of the Pods recently did an episode on Black Sabbath Dehumanizer with Rye from Sabbath Bloody Podcast. That was a great episode. And they also did one on Queen's kind of Freddie Mercury posthumous album Made in Heaven. They were not very nice to that album. It's a lot of fun to listen to. And they also did one Pink Floyd 1971 to 1977 that I really enjoyed lately. That's a really good one. Hawk Binge's latest one is Space Ritual. Made in A to Z just keeps cranking out episodes. They're doing a great job weekly. They're up to, they're going in alphabetical order. They're up to Die With Your Boots On in Different World. So check out that episode. Who am I missing here? Did that cover everybody? I think it might be. Sorry if I left anybody out, but I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently while I do my cleaning. But you know what? I will throw out, not part of the Deep Dive Podcast Network, but if you're into the Red Hot Chili Peppers, universally speaking, the Red Hot Chili Peppers podcast is phenomenal. Ben and Sam Townsend, two brothers who get together, have some beers, and get progressively more drunk as every episode goes on, and talking about, they listen to it's, so the format is kind of, usually the standard format is they listen to a Chili Pepper song and then they talk about it, but you don't really, they play like a 30-second snippet of the song, but they listen to the whole song and then they talk about it. They have a lot of great laughs. The laughs are infectious. So sometimes one of them will start laughing and then the other one will start laughing and then the other one will start laughing more and then the other one starts laughing more and then it's like 10 seconds in and I start laughing. It's just a lot of fun listening to those guys. They've got a great rapport. Obviously they've known each other their entire lives, so they've got a great chemistry together. It's a lot of fun. Did I say T-Bone's Prime Cuts?
I don't think you did.
His latest episode, he interviewed John Oates, and it was awesome. Because as you know, he used to work with Hall & Oates, so he knows John Oates really well. So it was really cool, not just hearing an interview with John Oates about what he's doing now, what he was doing back in the day, but you're hearing two friends talking too. So it's really cool hearing John Oates talk to his old buddy. So that was a really cool. That's actually the first one I had up, but for some reason I skipped it. And that was a really great interview. But I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. Yeah, just why not? Why not?
Well, if you do, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, I will. Believe me, I will hear about it. Oh, you mentioned everybody but me. Yeah. So that's all we got this week. Got a little self promotion for the network tagged on to the end there, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and you'll run to Discogs and pick up a copy of these great singles. We're trying to move some of these. Try to finally get some of these sold. We're gonna get Let's Go to the Disco charting in 2021. It's gonna be a top 40 hit.
Oof. You're gonna have to sell a lot more than we have listeners, I think.
Yeah, I don't think our entire listener base, if they all bought one, is enough to really move the needle and get this into the top.
On a 50-year-old single, whatever it is.
Oh man. Oh well, I guess until next week, my friend, where we will talk about who knows what we'll talk about next week. Actually, do you know what we're going to talk about next week?
You might know.
I don't think.
Well, wait. No, tell me later.
I'll tell you eventually.
I don't know. Some weeks I don't know.
Yeah, some weeks you don't. Yeah,
So
you,
you-
don't know. So, okay. Well, next.
No,
week
I
will
don't
be-
know if I know the schedule. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure.
I think I think it's shared with you, but you might. You probably just don't check that document very often.
Oh, probably.
All right. Well, until next week. Have a great one.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.